Okay, go right ahead, Antonio.
All right, so our first question comes from the topic of growth on Route 40. The question is, what do you feel is the biggest challenge for business along Route 40? And we're going to start with Robert.
I think the biggest challenge currently is dealing with lack of infrastructure to support business along Route 40. Other than the 40 and 15 interchange, there's not a good way to get people onto and off of the Golden Mile as a business corridor. And so there's a lot of traffic down at the 15 end and a lot less traffic down at the far end. And so there's a change in the level of traffic to and from businesses, and the traffic pattern and the infrastructure for handling traffic that's in place is no longer sufficient to manage the number of people who need to come to the Golden Mile in order to keep it a viable business district. And we need to look at ways to change that.
Okay, thank you. Chris, the same question. Would you like me to repeat it? Okay. All right, so the question is, what do you feel the biggest challenge for businesses along Route 40?
So when I moved here when I was 6 years old, I thought of the Golden Mile as Disney World. For me, I'd always heard of Epcot as this place where you could find folks from all over the world making a living. And as I grew up and opened my own business downtown, the Golden Mile lived up to that hype. The only difference between the Golden Mile and downtown is that the downtown area was made for feet and the Golden Mile was made for cars. If we truly want to connect this city and really bring it all together, the city needs to lead the way in transportation. Part of our campaign is proposing a free Frederick Flyer shuttle that would truly connect not only the Golden Mile and downtown, but also East Side Rising, the north side, the south side.
Thank you.
The whole city needs to be brought together.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody is talking. Is that our moderator, or did I
No,
just...
it was not me. We took care of it.
Oh, never mind. Then, long story short, transportation, build a free Frederick Flyer that connects Hood College, the Golden Mile, and gets people to the places on the Golden Mile that will soon become their favorite small businesses. I'm looking at you, Wonderbooks. I'm looking at you at VR. I'm looking at you, Warehouse Cinemas. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Next up is Derrick. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, sir, I understand it. Previously, it had been mentioned has been connectivity, and connectivity in terms of modes of transportation, whether that be cars, whether that be cycling, bicycles, or whether that be walking. But I want to add another layer to that connectivity, and that's also in terms of how do we connect our city in terms of getting them to the Golden Mile, in terms of supporting our businesses. It's not enough in terms of traffic or in terms of connectivity, in terms of transportation, but it's also in terms of how do we promote the tremendous growth and opportunities that are on our Golden Mile. We've seen our Golden Mile grow exponentially over the course of these past few years. And it's definitely a gem. Many of us who have lived here for a long period of time recognize and remember the vibrancy of the Golden Mile. And along with that vibrancy we've had many folks who have come far and wide to that area of our city. So we need to promote that city, not just in terms of transportation, make it accessible, but also talk about the great stuff that's happening along the Golden Mile and how we can continue to promote the vibrancy of that area of our city.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Kelly. Would you like me to repeat the question, or are you good?
I think I got it. Right. I would say that Route 40 of the Golden Mile over the years has changed significantly. It is very vibrant. I'm out there at least once a week purchasing something, but the city has made great efforts in connectivity in terms of the shared use path connection, the undercrossing under Route 15 connecting east and west sides. We currently have a project in the works with the State Highway Administration that will build a shared use path along the south side of Route 40 and also connect those bus lanes so that buses can go straight down Route 40 and not have to go in and out of the shopping centers. That's sort of a design flaw from the past that's going to take a long time to connect and correct. And I agree that not just transportation wise, but we need to connect our Golden Mile culturally, psychologically to the rest of the city. It's a marvelous place. It is vibrant. Things are happening out there. And I would encourage everybody to take some time and do some shopping out there as I do. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Next up is Katie.
Yeah, so I think you're going to hear a lot of agreement. I agree with everything that was said, and I'm so excited that we're having this conversation because as a resident of the Golden Mile, and Rob, you and I share that, we're both residents of the Golden Mile, and we're strong advocates for our neighbors out here. I totally and completely agree that connectivity is an issue. We're strong advocates for the shared use path. I think that needs to be accelerated to the best of our ability, and I know that we're working on it. I want to compliment the city. I do think that the conversation has dramatically changed from woe is us to being excited about all that is going on. And I think that Alderman Shackelford made an excellent point that we do need to celebrate the vibrancy. I do think that's something that is holding businesses back, is that we don't highlight it and talk about it enough. And not just our elected leaders, but our residents as well. I do want to take a plug. I didn't hear it, but I know that others agree that bus shelters absolutely must be part of the discussion. I've been a strong advocate for pedestrian improvements. And I know that, again, we'll have a lot of agreement about that, but I do think that if we're serious about connecting folks, we need to make those improvements as well.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Ben's up next.
You've all made some great points about transportation and connectivity, and I think those are really important. And I'm therefore going to use my time actually to stand up for the Golden Mile a bit, as I feel like it takes a lot of criticism that is unfair. At some other forums that I've watched this summer, I felt like some folks running for office were really coming down on the west side of our city and almost saying, why would anyone want to go there? We need to fix that part of town. And I think that's really an insult to the really vibrant communities that are on the west side of our city. And many of the businesses on the Route 40 corridor, they may not be all businesses that folks from out of town or even different parts of our city want to shop at every week. That's because they're businesses that the residents that live in that part of our city shop at every week. And they have different needs, and they have different tastes, and they have different desires. The fact is, almost all of the Golden Mile is tenanted. It's a very active business corridor.
Thank you, Ben.
It doesn't necessarily look like what some people want it to, but this is a prosperous part of our city that caters really well to a lot of the neighbors that live right around there.
Thank you, Ben. And Donna, would you like me to repeat the question? Do you have it?
Nope, I have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to follow Ben on this. I believe the west side of town is more vibrant than it has been in years, and many of the businesses are just booming out there. Does it look like it did 20 years ago? No. And is it going to ever again? No, because we have a different society than we did then. I'm going to just note West Side Regional Park is going to bring many people to the west side of the city. That park is a destination, and foot traffic downtown and car traffic on the west side is important for businesses. That's going to bring this to those areas. Well, sure, there are absolutely some connectivity issues, and we work on those as we can. West Side Regional Park is going to make a huge difference in this side of town and provide some more amenities that they deserve. Also, the Golden Mile Alliance is working very hard to bring things to the west side of town. And between them, the residents, and the city, I think it's going very well over there.
Okay, thank you. All right, so our next question is going to be about economic development. All right, so what plans do you have that would attract more businesses to Frederick? And what can you do to support existing ones? We'll start with Donna.
Thank you. So, my thoughts of economic development, I think, are a little different than many people's thoughts on economic development. During the pandemic, we've certainly provided some small business loans, some small business grants. We've worked to help our businesses stay viable. That's especially true and necessary for small businesses, because small businesses make up a majority of the businesses in Frederick. But for me, I'm going to go back to education. We should be providing education that allows people to work in all of these industries, and not just college degrees, but providing mentorships and help with students. young and adults, to help them understand the different types of jobs that they can get and help them move into those jobs in the city. So education is it for me.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Ben's up next.
Thank you, Antonio. I feel that we need to talk about who we're focusing our economic development priorities and programs for. There are some really attractive, high-level industries that get a lot of attention, tech industries, other high-paid white-collar industries, biotechnology industries. Those are very important in our city. But the truth is, many, many people do not work for those industries, and at this stage in their life, do not have the training or background for those industries. As we move forward with economic development in the city of Frederick, we cannot exclusively focus on the knowledge economy. We need to also be focusing on lower wage earners, middle wage earners. We need to be focusing on jobs that can support a full family, if not making six figures. We also need to be focusing on specifically targeting programs towards disadvantaged businesses, women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses. The disparity study conducted by our last administration, which was so long overdue, showed that not only does the city historically hire far fewer disadvantaged business enterprises than it should, but that their participation in the broader economy, in the private sector, is far below what it should be based on how diverse our community is.
Thank you, Ben. Next up is Katie Nash.
And I'll pick up where Ben left off. I'm so excited. When I talk about economic development, it is in the context of economic equity. I want to celebrate and highlight the work of Mayor O'Connor and the current administration for making that investment into the disparity study and moving that program forward. We are at a very exciting point. If you're interested in this topic right now, we are, because I'm the co-chair of the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Review Panel, the advisory group that is charged with looking at this issue. Right now, we're examining the study recommendations and we're moving the program forward. So study after study and numerous research after research tells us that when we don't have an equitable economy, we don't have a strong economy. And so I think that this is a really strong and important step forward to make sure that our economy is as strong as it can be and that we're meeting the needs of the 21st century. Thank you.
Okay. So next up is Kelly Russell. Excuse me, sorry.
No, thank you so much. And I'm going to follow the discussion that was just being had about the disparity study, which has been concluded, and we have just received a set of recommendations on policy and legislative changes that will help the city move forward in an area where we have lagged behind, where there really in past leadership scenarios has not been the kind of focus that we should have had on these issues. And I'm very thankful to my colleagues who have pushed very hard for some of these things to come forward. Economic development is important, and as Alderwoman Kuzemchak said, not everything requires a college degree. There are trades that we are desperately in need of folks to learn. There are many different levels of jobs, and we have to make sure that we're giving opportunities to everybody in our community to prosper and to enjoy our city in an equitable manner. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up is Derrick Shackleford.
Thank you for the question, and I know it was already been discussed in regards to minority-owned business and the disadvantaged business panel. So I don't want to continue down that road, which has been mentioned. I will touch upon that in a minute. I think what's important about economic development is having an economy that works for everyone. What we have seen during this pandemic is a greater divide between the have and the have-nots. And the economy does not work for everyone. And so I think it's so important when we look at this economy that we understand has been mentioned about education. It's great that our city wants to do wonderfully well in terms of economy that has great paying jobs, but we also recognize there are folks, particularly during this pandemic, who we deemed essential, and we found out there were folks who were essential, weren't essential, but folks who were essential who were not getting paid a living wage, which is another conversation in terms of economic development and economic growth. But I think it's so important we talk about education in terms of high paying jobs. We also talk about trades. We also talk about mentoring programs. We also talk about entrepreneurial opportunities and the entrepreneurial spirit. So I think there's a vast opportunity in terms of economic development and how we define that, and there's ways that in which we can look at.
Okay, thank you, Derrick. Next up is Chris Sparks. You're muted, Chris.
And we're back in business. When I think about economic development, I think about investing in small businesses. Anybody who has been to downtown Frederick knows that the magic comes from all these folks who have built their own small businesses and have made Frederick vibrant and unique. The role of the city is to give those businesses a way to shine. And to do that, we need bold, new ideas. We need to build a permanent, pedestrian-only Market Street Mall. We need to close Market Street to vehicles to stop Frederick from becoming a pass-through between interstates and to turn it into a destination. Because when the city can invest in tourism, we can get the tourists to invest in small businesses like mine, like restaurants, like others. Everybody wins when small businesses do. So bring the people to town. The Market Street Mall is the sort of idea we need to really reinvent and reimagine our downtown. And the prosperity will be evident. Something to think about. More information on our website. Thanks, folks.
Thank you. And Robert Van Rens is next.
Thank you. Everybody else has said everything that I could possibly say about building a more equitable economy and supporting small businesses, which these are things that are very important. And as a small business owner, I feel in my bones that these are key parts of economic development in the city. I think that we need to take a look at what the city's major economic engines are and look at what else we could be doing to expand the ones that are underperforming. The city has a really large, but at the same time, very diffuse and undirected creative economy. We're chock full of arts organizations, of people who have creative enterprises of all sorts, and the city could act as a catalyst to bring those together and make Frederick an important cultural destination, which would be a major economic boom to the city if we took the time to do that and do it purposefully.
All right, thank you. Before we jump to the next question, I just wanted to remind the candidates that Laura Westorp is doing the timekeeping. So when you see green, you've got time, yellow means we're halfway through, and red means your time has expired. Just want to go over that real quick.
And before you go into the next question, I have something I would like to say. I want to welcome our interpreters that have made it a few moments ago, Dave Gratzer and Richard Brumberg, I think it is. I apologize, Richard, if I have your last name incorrect. For anyone that may need the services of the ASL interpreter, you will see in the upper right-hand corner of your screen that there is 3 dots. On that, you'll be able to see an option that says pin video. Please pin that video so that the interpreter will always stay visible to you. And to piggyback on what Antonio was saying about time, so that we're sure we can reach all the questions that we want and have time for at least 2 or 3 public questions, we will be turning the microphone off for any candidate that goes over their time. Okay, Antonio, thanks.
I think Laura has something to say real quick.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, the yellow is when you have 15 seconds left.
Okay.
Not halfway through. When you have 15 seconds left, the yellow goes up.
All right, thank you, my mistake. All right, so the next question is going to be on the topic of homelessness. So, what role does the city have in supporting individuals and families who are experiencing homelessness? And we're going to start with Robert on this one.
Well, the city should certainly take more of a leadership role than it currently does. The city adopted in 2015 a strategic plan to end homelessness. It has clearly defined goals and steps, and currently the city has met none of them. That needs to change. The city should be undertaking projects for supportive housing for homeless, homeless residents who require it, for expanded transitional housing, to get people off of the streets, to get them into temporary housing on the way to more permanent situations. Should be looking at subsidized housing that will allow people in the longer term to have a roof over their heads while they're getting back to a situation where they can afford permanent housing on their own. And right now, the city is not doing any of these things.
Okay, thank you. And next up is Chris Sparks.
If we as leaders in the city do nothing else, we need to take care of people. At the end of the day, we're not going to be judged based on what policies we pass here and there. It's going to come down to how did we care for the human beings that were under our watch. 2 weekends ago at my business on Market Street, we had a young man sitting outside that we needed to call emergency services for. He was barely lucid, he couldn't keep himself upright, and he was younger than me. We called, someone came, they picked him up, and 3 hours later, I saw him in the same exact position 3 blocks down. We have a human problem where these people need a place to stay, they need a place to go, and they need services. And those services aren't rocket science. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. There are activists and specialists in our nonprofit communities that have been petitioning the city for years, but they are not getting the resources or the attention that they need. There are simple matters that we can attend to, putting out trash cans south of the creek, looking for ways to make sure that human beings are cared for and their dignity respected. This is not a problem that we can't solve. We can do this, and we must.
Thank you, Chris. Next up is Derrick.
Thank you for the question. One of the ways we can start is by changing our language. What I mean by changing our language, referring to people in our community as they. We've already ostracized folks by saying others and they, those people or they or we are a part of our community. And we don't know their situations nor circumstances. The city cannot do everything, but what the city can do and what the city has done is lead. We talked about housing, but also in terms of how do we connect our folks in our city with services, mental health services, drug treatment services, substance abuse. These are important pieces of that puzzle. The city has started to do some of those things. We need to do more. But it's going to be incumbent upon all of us, and not just the city government, to do all of this. Everyone in terms of who experiences homelessness is a part of our community. And I think it's important that we recognize that and include everyone in knowing that many of us are just one paycheck away from not having a roof over our heads ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Kelly Russell.
Alderman Shackelford, thank you for that. What I heard in one of the previous answers was equating homelessness to substance abuse, essentially. And I would just point out, as a person who experienced 6 months of homelessness myself back in 1980 as a college dropout, not having a permanent home is not the same thing as substance abuse. Sometimes they are related. Mental health issues can be involved, but absolutely, this is a we. This is not an us or they or them. Just because somebody looks different or smells different or has that doesn't have the same kind of situation is not a reason to ignore them. The city has done a tremendous job, I think, in expanding job training, job counseling. The Community Action Agency and our Housing and Human Services Division are working on plans. We have a Housing First program. We've converted our shelter to a permanent supportive housing. There are a number of programs that the city is participating in, and we have very strong partnerships with a lot of nonprofits, faith-based organizations, and that's how.
Okay. I believe Chris Sparks wanted to have a rebuttal.
Respectfully, yes. I would like to wait till all the candidates have a chance to speak first.
Okay. So the next up is Katie.
Yes, so I've been very fortunate to advocate for expanded shelter options for homelessness and had some success. And I will lend my voice to, I guess, take a different direction. I think that, a lot of folks don't realize that the Frederick Community Action Agency, which is a city agency, is actually the federally designated agency for Frederick County. And so what this means is it places a lot of responsibility for administration of social services on the city. And I think that as we reimagine the newly created City Housing and Human Services Division, we have to be considering a more sustainable model with increased county government contribution, particularly as the county's growth continues. And I also think that it's incumbent upon us to talk about the evictions crisis and the pending crisis that we're facing as protections come off. I do think that with the housing assistance money going to the county, it will be incumbent upon us to advocate for additional opportunities for our residents to access that funding. The county just had a briefing, so we are making moves in the right direction, but we have ways to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ben.
Our city should and must play a massive role in helping to support our residents who are experiencing homelessness and helping them as we help all of our residents and families to flourish into their most successful lives that meet their needs, that let them reach their own full potential as they see it. That includes many different aspects, addressing the root causes of why a person may be experiencing homelessness. That involves topics I'm sure we'll get to in depth this evening, expanding affordable housing, expanding employment and job training opportunities, and at times, expanding mental and behavioral health services and substance abuse disorder services. Those last things are something we've been addressing over these last couple of years, adding case managers, adding behavioral health specialists that are mental health professionals, adding mental health professionals working directly with the Frederick Police Department. Those sorts of projects are having successes and need to be continued and expanded.
Thank you, Ben. And then Donna.
Sorry, this thing's having difficulty muting tonight. So personally, I am proud of city residents for already paying more than $500,000 a year for our Frederick Community Action Agency, which provides support for our homeless population. Thank you, Katie Nash, for acknowledging that issue. Affordable housing is an issue in the city, and we've made some strides in that on that issue. Mental health support is also necessary. Homeless people are not one or the other. Sometimes there are numerous things that cause homelessness. And so this needs to be a multi-pronged approach, and it needs to be done as a partnership with other government agencies. Has been stated by a number of people. We do have partnerships, and those partnerships are important. We need to expand those partnerships. But expecting city residents to just pay for all of this, I think, is blatantly unfair.
All right, thank you. And
Now I'm
then,
going to chime in, moderator.
all right, yeah, you can go ahead with your rebuttal. I just like want everyone to know everyone gets 4 rebuttals tonight, and their time limit of 30 seconds. Go ahead.
With all this talk tonight about how much we're investing in the city, my question for the current board and those seeking office: how much do trash cans cost? When I knocked doors on the south side of the city, the number one thing they kept asking me for is, when are we going to put in trash cans? Because the people that walk between Molnix Park, the Community Action Agency, Shepherd Pratt, they're passing out on the streets down there and just tossing their garbage onto the streets. They've approached you all at City Hall many times over the last 4 years. What is it going to take to get you to put those out?
Thank you, Chris. Does anyone else have a rebuttal, or can we move on to the next question? All righty. So the next question is going to be in regards to public safety. All righty, and the question is, what legislation would you propose to help improve public safety in Frederick? And we're going to start this one off with Ben Mcshane.
Thank you, Antonio. I want to address a couple of priorities for public safety. The first is the reality of substance abuse disorder and of the often related mental health and behavioral health problems that some of our residents are experiencing. The folks that are experiencing some of these problems are having really difficult days. They're having really bad days. And I've been very happy to see recent steps forward in our Frederick Police Department under new leadership to move forward with a law enforcement assisted diversion program, a LEAD program, and crisis cars staffed by mental health professionals, so that we have that staff responding to many of these incidents and not just uniformed armed law enforcement. Legislation would be to expand those programs and to solidify current pilot programs to make mental health an ingrained part of how we respond.
Okay, thank you. And then next we'll go to Katie.
Yes, thank you. I also applaud the creation of the diversion, the crisis car. Going forward, one of our challenges will be to make sure that crisis car is 24 hours a day, and it's not an easy fix. It's going to take a lot of partnership and contributions of funding, but I think that's very important. I had a chance to sit down with Chief Lando. He's been an excellent choice. I applaud the mayor and the current board for bringing Chief Lando to Frederick. I'm very excited to talk about public safety in a more holistic way, talk about speed enforcement and traffic calming and using physical barriers to make people slow down. I'm really excited to talk about that. I kind of worked it in there because I knew I wouldn't have a question devoted to that. But I do think that it is incumbent upon us to do everything that we can to improve the pedestrian and cyclist safety and our motorist safety, quite frankly. And we've grown so fast that we just have a little bit of catching up to do. And I'm excited to work on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question goes to Kelly Russell. Same question.
I apologize. Would you repeat the question, please?
Yes. The question is, what legislation would you propose to help improve public safety in the city of Frederick?
Public safety is a number of things. It is adequate infrastructure. It is law enforcement. It is having safe housing for folks. So there are a lot of, it's a very broad spectrum of public safety. And, I think I'm very supportive of legislation that we've moved forward that will help to solve some of these issues. I'm sorry, I'm having one of those old lady moments. But infrastructure is very important. We've talked about flood mitigation, infrastructure, and road safety. As the chair of the National Capital Region Transportation Planning Board, we forwarded some tangible safety measures to the cities and jurisdictions across the region. So there are a lot of different aspects of public safety, all of which I'll try to address more better in a different question. Sorry for that.
Thank you. All right, so next up is Derrick.
Thank you for the question. And I think has already been mentioned in regards to mental health services and our lead car, and also about Katie had mentioned about traffic calming measure, and Alderman Russell was so poignant when she said that it's a very broad subject. So I want to talk about this. This administration has outfitted all law enforcement officers with body cameras. And what that does is that increases the trust between the community and this police department. One, it helps the police department in terms of knowing that our police department does its job professionally. And secondly, for our community to know that our police department does its job professionally. And when those things don't occur, we're now able to have these conversations and then move legislation forward that can correct those problems. So when we talk about public safety, it's very broad, but I think the number one aspect has to be the relationship between the community and this police department. And I think that's the viable, most important thing in terms of how do we now continue that and allow our residents to know that we have a police department that we can trust in the police department.
Okay, thank you, Derrick. All right, next up is Chris Sparks.
When it comes to public safety, when we are trustworthy in watching over the small things, we can then protect against great things. I can't speak about every issue in every part of the city, but I can speak to what I've seen as a business owner. And when it comes to the safety of the city, it's a matter of watching out for the little things. The loud cars that go blaring up and down our main streets at all hours of the day, speeding through pedestrian zones. It's the lack of speed cameras at critical intersections. It's the lack of awareness or patrols to stop folks from going through residential and school areas where people need to be kept safe. I applaud Chief Lando, and I am excited to see what the work he continues to do in Frederick. Repairing the trust between our law enforcement and our Frederick community is going to be part and parcel to making sure our city continues to grow. I am hopeful that together we can keep Frederick a safe place to stay, play, and thrive.
All right, thank you. Next up is Robert.
I'd like to say that the points that both Kelly and Derrick made about public safety being a range of things, not just a matter of law enforcement, are very well taken. But I would like to point out that I think one of the things that we can do well, or we can do better, and I think that Chief Lando is committed to doing, is ensuring that the Frederick Police Department going forward better reflects the makeup of the city, that that there are more officers who are better representatives of the community, that are more embedded in the community, and that have better roots in the community, so they understand the diverse and rich community that we live in. And I think that that understanding will help increase public safety and decrease conflict between the community and those in authority over it.
Okay, thank you. So before we move to the next question, does anyone have any rebuttals? Donna?
I didn't get to answer that question.
Oh, sorry, Donna. Go ahead.
Thanks. So I've actually recently requested a discussion on rental licensing for the purpose of providing safe spaces for residents. I do believe rental licensing is a safety issue. As noted by Alderman Mcshane, Law Enforcement Assistant Diversion Program is a game changer. I look forward to expanding that program. As I certainly look forward to, I believe that we should be expanding speed cameras all over the city because speeding is a citywide issue. As Alderman Russell noted, I also support proper infrastructure to enhance safety, because without infrastructure, you don't have safety. And that goes back to just even the planning of it. And certainly, as stated by Alderman Shackelford, those body-worn cameras absolutely do help with the trust of the community, which again is a safety issue. So I believe this board has moved forward. I'm proud of what we've done, and I think there are other things we can do to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, does anyone have any rebuttals regarding this question? All right, Ben?
Thank you, Antonio. I would like to bring something into the room during this conversation, that what I believe is the greatest threat to our residents' true safety is male chauvinism and the resultant intimate partner violence that is pandemic in this community. The truth is, the majority of our highest profile incidents that the public learns about, that officials learn about, it's armed men with a gun threatening their wives and children. It's armed men barricaded in their apartments.
Okay, thank you, Ben. I believe Kelly also had a rebuttal.
Yes, I just wanted to speak briefly about speed cameras, which are enabled by the state legislature, and they are only enabled in school zones right now. So it is not a possibility to put them at every intersection. What we can do is partner with our state legislative partners to expand that program, and that enables us to do more with that.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have a rebuttal? All right, so then we'll go to the next topic, which is COVID. So how can the city effectively help businesses recover from the effects of COVID? And we're going to start with Katie Nash.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that we saw tremendous pivoting from our businesses. I know many of us were spending a lot of time trying to change our shopping ways and buy local as much as possible. And I think that I want to compliment the work that was done to accelerate PPP loans, and that was a local, state, and federal action. And I do think that I think you guys did a really nice job, and it was very difficult to be, I can only imagine, be elected during the pandemic. And I think that was excellent work. I do think that going forward, one of the things that I'm very passionate about, one of the reasons that I ran, was to tie the state, local, of course, county and federal dollars back to the city. Be aggressive. I do acknowledge that the city right now does pay for a federal grants coordinator. I want to compliment you all on doing that. I think that's going to be tremendously helpful as the federal government moves the infrastructure plan forward. I think making sure that we're well positioned, as I believe that we have had our eye on that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question goes to Kelly. I mean, same question. I don't know why I keep saying next question. Same question goes to Kelly.
Thank you. The city has been very proactive in helping businesses as they have pivoted in different ways. We have implemented the pop-up dining, the pickup zones. We have implemented different micro grants and things like that to help our businesses flourish. Our Department of Economic Development has worked very closely with our business communities to figure out ways how we can help. Certainly, we know that supporting our local businesses and supporting ourselves by example is a very good way to support our businesses. But COVID has been very challenging, and people are, there's not only the illness that we're dealing with, but there's a psychological challenge to, feeling safe and getting outside. And I think one of the things we can do is encourage people to please get vaccinated and wear a mask, get vaccinated, get vaccinated, get vaccinated. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna go to Derrick Shackleford.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. It was already been mentioned as the city has provided micro grants for our small businesses. And I think Alderman Russell raises the most important point when we talk about the viability for small businesses, that folks have to feel safe. We are in a challenging time because of information that's being disseminated. I think it's so important, one, for the city to give out factual, correct, and proper information. Secondly, for the opportunities to partner with our county officials to make sure that vaccines are available in the city, as well as testing. When those things happen, then people will be able to feel safe, and then they will be able to patronize businesses. I think it's also important for our businesses to have the right information, not only from the city, but also from our state and federal partners, so that the message is clear in regards to safety for their patrons and safety for their customers, and also safety for their establishments.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're same question to Chris Sparks.
The very best thing that the city can do to help small businesses is to be proactive and not reactive. I don't have to imagine what it was like to be a small business owner during COVID. I lived it. My business was closed for 3 months. And the city had ideas they put forward, then they'd retract them. In this last week alone, the mayor tried to come out and say that we were going to take away the popular outdoor dining and pop-up dining programs. My video about it went viral. And within 24 hours, the mayor is now calling on the Board of Aldermen to extend pop-up dining. My question is just, is the city going to be helpful to us or a hindrance to us small businesses in recovery? Don't come in and say that you want to help small businesses and then sweep the legs out from underneath us by changing the rules of the city and the game. Last summer, we closed down Market Street all summer. This summer, we did it once a month and seemingly at random. If the city was just proactive and had a vision, that would work wonders in helping us small business owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We will now go to Robert. Go ahead.
Tanya, would you mind repeating the question? I'm having a hard time hearing some of what's being said, including the question originally.
No problem. How can the city effectively help the businesses recover from the effects of COVID?
Thank you. I think one of the things that the city can do in the longer term is an expanded public health effort, because I think part of the health of small businesses and the health of any businesses, large or small, is maintaining the health of the workforce and the residents, the customers of those businesses. And the city can partner more effectively and more aggressively with the county and the state in its public health efforts. I know the city's talking about a permanent public health presence on the west side, and I applaud that. I think that's a good first step, and that we should be looking at longer term, the idea that COVID is not going to go away anytime really soon. We should be planning for that and planning how we're going to handle that. And by taking that approach, we're creating an environment that's going to be better for both businesses and for their customers in the long term.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we're going to pass the question to Donna.
Thank you. There are as many, I'm sorry, my Zoom is doing something weird. So there are as many ideas for helping small businesses as there are small businesses. And some small businesses say, hey, close the streets down because we want people to be able to dine on the streets. And other small businesses say, hey, you close the streets down, now nobody gets to come to my business because they can't park out front. You cannot win that equation. You have to do the best that you can for all involved. Parking downtown has been an issue for years and years. So closing the downtown streets is not necessarily the answer, and it's certainly not an answer for just COVID. While it may have helped some restaurants, it's hurt some other businesses. So what we should do is get through this pandemic, keeping as many people healthy as possible, providing help and services for small businesses as we can, realizing it's a pandemic.
Okay, thank you, Donna. And then we'll go to Ben Mcshane.
Thank you, everyone. I also am a small business owner and carried on through a very difficult year during 2020 and was optimistic for a much better year in 2021. And just last week, a client contacted me to announce that an important project was being shut down for at least 1 to 2 weeks due to a COVID outbreak on another company's crew. And it's really frustrating to be back in that position after a year, to be back sending all of our team members through COVID testing, even though we're vaccinated, to be needing to get everyone double checked, to be needing to get negative results. The most important thing that the city can do is confront the actual public health pandemic itself. That's what businesses need. They need us to take this seriously and to try to get through this public health pandemic. That's what's crippling us, is this coming back around again and again.
Thank you, Ben. I see we have a couple rebuttals, so we'll go with Katie first.
Alderman Shackelford was first, Antonio.
Oh, and we'll go with Derrick.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Antonio. I think Alderman Mcshane makes a very poignant point, but also think during this pandemic, which has allowed us to understand is that things are not going back to what we deem normal. We're in a challenging time, and I think before we always say, I can't wait till things get back to normal, but normal as we know, it's not happening. So now how do we make the adjustments and be creative in these models and these opportunities that we have to have? And so I think it's incumbent upon the city to look at these opportunities to be creative with our opportunities that's before us.
Okay, thank you. Katie?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add, I do think that it is time to advocate for a return to indoor masking. So I just wanted to mention that because I do think that it contributes to keeping us open. And I also wanted to just mention that many of us are small businesses here and we don't all have storefronts. And so I do think it's a much more complicated discussion about what helps small businesses and maybe more than a minute conversation here. But thanks for the question.
Thank you. Kelly?
I think all these questions need more than a minute, but I wanted to point out that what the mayor did was come out and say that despite the fact that the governor has ended the state of emergency in the state of Maryland, we here in the city of Frederick are not ending our state of emergency. We recognize that there is still a health emergency, and we're looking now to tie our legislation to our own decisions on public health and our own declarations of state of emergency.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. And Chris, I believe you have a rebuttal.
Thank you. What the mayor had said, as Alderman Russell said, was, hey, we still have a COVID state of emergency, so because of that, let's get rid of all outdoor dining. So much so that we needed to panic and pivot to have this vote. We can check the records. The issues facing small businesses are advocated not just by me, but from the 40 other business owners I've talked to. We know what we need, and we're telling the city, it is the time for imagination, not more stagnation. There's a way we can win here, and it's small businesses.
Thank you, Chris. We're going to go to our next question, which is regarding downtown Frederick. Okay, so the question is, how do you balance the needs of downtown residents with visitors to keep the city center a viable tourist destination, sorry. And then we'll start with Kelly.
Well, I'll start with, could you please repeat the question? Because that was very,
I kind of
very
messed that
worked
one
out.
up. All right, so the question is, how do you balance the needs of downtown residents with visitors to keep the city center a viable tourist destination?
That again is a question for more than 1 minute, but we do have downtown residents, we do have downtown businesses, we have tourists, we have Carroll Creek, we are a destination. I think there are opportunities for us to, such as the Downtown Frederick Partnership and also our neighborhood advisory councils, to talk about what are the needs for the different communities. We have to make sure that we're not ignoring one segment of community or another. We do want to attract tourists because they do provide, income to our businesses and they support our economy, but we want to make sure that our residents know that we are there for them as well. They've made investments in living downtown. And I would just also point out that, Frederick is much more than downtown. While downtown is the important historic core of our city, we are a city of 75-ish thousand people, and we have a lot of different needs all over the community. And I think it's important that we remember that and not just focus on downtown.
All right, thank you, Kelly. And now we'll go to Derrick.
Thank you, Alderman Russell. I think that's so important that we have so much emphasis and focus on downtown. One would believe that all our city consists of is downtown, and it certainly does not. We haven't talked about our north or our south side of our city, which in terms of assistance, support, need support and assistance as well. But to the question, I think it's important that two aspects. One is that there be a collaborative effort between our business owners and also our residents. That they have these discussions and how we take these discussions and how we get these ideas. Secondly, I think all of us want to have a city where it's welcoming, one, where we talk about tourists, but also for the folks who live here, that's a welcoming place, an inviting place. And secondly, that's a safe place. So I think the balance of those and how those two work together is so important to our downtown, but not only to our downtown, but to our whole entire city, because downtown is just not the destination, but our whole entire city is a destination.
Okay, thank you, Derrick. And now we'll go to Chris Sparks.
The city's job here is straightforward. Use our ability to start the conversation to really invest in tourism. Get the hotel built downtown. Invest in the Frederick Flyer to connect the communities around our city, north, south, east, and west. And create the Market Street Mall. In talking to owners and in talking to residents, creating a unique environment downtown where the arts can flourish, shopping can be entertained, and dining can be more than just something that's an excuse for motorcycles to pass by, creates an experience. And when Frederick City is more than just a destination, when it becomes an experience, we will be the #1 tourism destination in Maryland. When you invest in those small businesses and give them that place to play, the residents will have more experiences and more things to enjoy, and people from out of town will realize, well, we all love Frederick as much as we do. We can lead the way here. We got this.
All right, thank you, Chris. Now we're going to pass this question on to Robert.
Thank you. I think Alderman Shackelford made a very good point in that we're sort of ignoring that there are large parts of city outside of downtown that could be part of the solution here. Certainly, if you live downtown, the intense focus on tourism and business traffic downtown becomes something of a hassle. It becomes hard to find parking. It becomes sort of a constant nuisance with traffic noise and things like that. And so maybe we need to look at solutions that move some of that traffic out of downtown and allow people to continue moving downtown. And I don't necessarily know what that looks like right now. Maybe Chris is right, the idea of a Frederick Flyer that moves people from further out parking into downtown as pedestrians and allows us to get people downtown without maybe so many cars and other motor vehicles downtown is one possible solution.
Okay. And then we'll go to take the question to Donna.
Thank you. Something nobody's talked about yet is historic preservation. Historic preservation is one of the biggest draws to downtown Frederick, and certainly continuing that preservation is key to balancing a livable city and a city that people want to come visit. We should also continue our arts and entertainment districts that has provided and brought in new and vibrant art businesses, as well as, again, welcoming visitors to our city. So I think expansion of those are absolutely important. Having some type of a connection between the downtown and other parts of town, I'm absolutely a fan of doing that. We've tried it in the past. At that point in time, it cost $5,000 per ride. But that doesn't mean you can't try it again and try something different and see how it goes. So thank you.
right, thank you. Ben, your turn.
Thank you, everyone. The downtown core of our city in some regards is one of the more complicated parts of the city. There are so many different things happening there. People live there. There is retail there. There are restaurants there. There are offices there. There are city services located there. Many other parts of the city are predominantly just residential or predominantly just commercial or just industrial. They don't have all of those different dynamics that we do in the city center. That adds to its vibrancy, that makes it a very important part of the community at large. But it also means that balancing those interests, I believe, is an annual process that we revisit over and over again. There is no balance like Stonehenge that we can set up between all those different interests, and in millennia, it's still going to be working. That is why this downtown core of the city needs to be revisited as a model, and what's working and what's not working as an ongoing process.
Thank you, Ben, and we'll take it to Katie Nash now.
Yes, thank you, Alderman McShane, for bringing that up, because I do think it's important. And as Alderman, I believe that we are elected to serve the residents. And I do think that maintaining that balance, people love downtown Frederick, not just for the tourism, but also for the feel, and that feel without the contribution from our residents, it just wouldn't be there. It wouldn't be the same place. I think that we need to keep our eye on what Alderwoman Kuzemchak said, and she's been a stalwart supporter of historic preservation and advocate. And I think that for us newbies coming on, hopefully we need to demonstrate that we also care about historic preservation, because that is so important for the downtown core. One idea that I have, because we're going to have issues, right? We're going to have issues with affordability and maintaining historic preservation, is to create a special fund that's a matching fund to make sure that we have those who don't necessarily have the funds available to continue to make those investments in their homes, so that we're having a vibrant city and a vibrant future. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have any rebuttals on this question? All right, then we'll go on to the next question, which is about climate change. So on this question, what do you think the greatest environmental challenge facing the city? Sorry, what do you think is the greatest environmental challenge facing the city, and how would you work to overcome it? And we'll start with Derrick.
I don't know if there's just one. There's a multiplicity in terms of we talk about this question. One, the recognition of what the city has done that climate change is real. And it speaks to, I want to talk about this in terms of, it speaks to an economic issue, particularly for our residents who are living below the, or at the poverty or below the poverty line, who may not have the access in terms of information, access in terms of resources, access in terms of just the ability possibly to recycle, to compost, all these things in terms of what we know as climate change that affects our climate and affects our environment are so important. And I'm so happy to note that I'll give credit to Alderman Mcshane for his work on the climate change resolution, that we currently have a climate change work group. One of the things I also like to mention is, how do we also produce food? I'm a big proponent of community gardens, particularly in our communities that may have access to fresh produce, access to healthy foods. So those are some, I'll stop there.
Thank you. All right, and next up is Chris Sparks.
So two of the biggest things that the climate crisis is going to hit here in the DC metropolitan area, it's going to be the flooding, which we already have a problem with, and it's going to be also the refugees from the climate change as they're looking for new places to live. When it comes to the flooding in particular, it's why I stress again, Market Street Mall, pedestrian-only zones, and connectivity and infrastructure like the Frederick Flyer. We need to get people used to traveling together and moving in clean, green public transportation. We need to have the ability to invest and build more green spaces, and Market Street is a prime example of what that could look like. And when it comes to the refugee crisis that may come, we need to be ready and have a plan for where these people are going to move. And we need to make sure that Frederick is positioned to welcome them with open arms, to make sure that we as one great human family can work together as Mother Earth starts to heat up more. Again, we can do this together. We just need to have a plan, and we need to have a vision.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. And now to Robert.
First, I'd like to say thank you to Alderman Shackelford for bringing up public gardens and composting. As an avid gardener, those are things that are very near and dear to my heart. But specifically, one of the things I think the city needs to be considering doing, and I think that this is something we're only barely scratching the surface of, is we need to be looking at what a city looks like using vehicles that no longer burn fossil fuels. And so we need to be working much harder and much faster on what cities look like where most vehicles are electric, where they plug in. So we need to look at public electric vehicle charging stations, and we need to look at how do we incentivize people to put those charging stations at their home, and how do we create regulations that prevent multifamily dwellings from keeping those kinds of charging stations from existing. And I think that's an important thing for the city to be doing.
Okay, thank you, Robert. And now we'll go to Donna Kazemchak.
So we've started a composting pilot program this year. We've had composting bins for people to purchase in the past couple of years, very cheap. I think that composting pilot program is something that I would like to see expand as quickly as possible. I'd certainly like to see it happening with restaurants. That's one of the biggest wastes of space in landfills that there can be. Certainly a serious issue for climate change. Flooding has already hit our city in the worst of ways, and we've worked on that. This particular Board of Aldermen has put, I think it's $800,000 into the first part of the fix, plus hundreds of thousands of dollars into the studies for that. We certainly need to upgrade our infrastructure to take care of the flooding and to expand renewable energy in as many areas as possible in the city. Again, not a quick answer.
Thank you, Donna. All right, we'll take the question to Ben Mcshane.
Thank you, Antonio. Our greatest threat, of course, is greenhouse gases and the warming of our planet. We need to take responsibility for our local portion of that only by working globally across all of our cities, all of our towns, all of our states and countries. Are we going to address this? We are already decades behind. The city has taken some good steps in recent years to promote electric vehicles, to add more EV to our own fleet, to do energy audits on some of the city's own buildings, but there is a great deal more we need to do. I was very happy to sponsor the climate emergency resolution this last year that launched the climate emergency work group joint with the county, and our city board of aldermen will be receiving that final product of recommendations in just a few weeks. And we need to move quickly toward incentivizing solar on municipal buildings, on homes. It needs to be easy to charge. It needs to be easy to install, incentivizing home-based gardening. There's going to be dozens and dozens of recommendations for us. We have a lot of work to do.
Okay, thank you, Ben. And now we'll turn this question over to Katie Nash.
So this issue is something that, obviously touches every area of public policy in the city of Frederick. But I do think that I want to compliment the work of the mobilization work group. Mobilize Frederick is the website that you can go to view the draft report. It is long. There's so many recommendations that we'll need to tackle, but the work that this group has done over the last couple of years, and of course, some have been working on this issue much longer, that work and those recommendations will be our plan, will be our vision. They are, these are way smarter people than I am. I'm not a scientist. And these are folks that have spent the time doing the work, doing the research. And now it's up to us as wannabe elected officials, current elected officials, to do the work, read the report, and make the recommendations reality. And I also just wanted to compliment the current mayor and board. The comp plan is also an incredibly important document that we all need to read and understand if we want to be serious about climate change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Katie. And then Kelly Russell.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you phrased the question, but I think it was, what's the biggest challenge in climate change? I mean, just climate change generally is the biggest challenge, and that just touches so many areas. We've heard about greenhouse gases. I'm very interested in electrifying our fleet. I've long mentioned the idea of having a solar field out at Frederick Municipal Airport, FPK, to supplement some of our energy production. Composting is the most expensive and wasteful part of our waste stream, and so I'm very excited that the city is moving forward on some of those efforts. Using other modes of transportation, whether it's bicycling, walking, mass transit, getting vehicles off the road. Single occupant vehicle trips are the probably highest polluter in the region. So we have challenges from heat. We could have challenges from drought. We're working on challenges for flooding. All of these things are ongoing, and the city acknowledges they're real. And I think that's important.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Does anyone have a rebuttal? Okay, without anyone rebutting, what we're going to do is we're going to go into a 3-minute break. We'll come back and we'll ask participant questions. So if you guys feel free to mute yourself and go get a drink, do what you need to do, and we'll come back at 7:54. All right, are all the candidates back? I see Chris, I see Kelly, I see Katie. There's Donna. There's Robert. There's Ben. And there's Derrick. Okay. So we are going to start our audience questions. So the first audience question is, what are your specific plans to implement food and other organic diversions from restaurants and other large producers such as of such discards in the city of Frederick? I'll repeat that again. What are your specific plans to implement food and other organic diversions from restaurants and other large producers such as discards from the city of Frederick? We're going to start with Chris Sparks.
So if I understood that question correctly, I think what they're asking about is how do we deal with food waste? And we've already talked about some solid ideas to deal with composting and things like that. When I think of food, the thing that I'm more concerned about isn't the food that's going out, but how food is getting to people. One of the things we saw during the COVID pandemic was that there is a massive need in our city for people to have access to food. I applaud folks like Ajay Hill and the I Believe in Me initiative for stepping up to the plate to feed Frederick throughout the pandemic. The city moving forward needs to help pick up that slack to make sure that we are respecting the dignity of our citizens by making sure they have access to food and the other resources that they need. So when it comes to the business solutions of dealing with food, I defer to the restaurateurs on that. But when it comes to feeding people, I need to be able to trust in our elected leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we're going to go to Robert with the question.
Thank you. Specifically, I'm going to understand the question to deal with by diversion, diverting food waste out of the waste stream. And the three biggest producers of organic food waste within the city of Frederick are the restaurant industry, restaurant supply industry, and the public school system, all of which generate really enormous quantities of food waste. There are places where edible food could be diverted out and put towards charitable food programs like Chris is talking about. And I think those things are definitely worth exploring, and we should be looking at how we could better implement that. But it leaves us with a lot of food waste that needs to be dealt with. And the state has a pilot program established for regional composting centers. And I think the city should be partnering with the state on that and getting on board as sort of an early adopter in those programs.
Great, thank you. And next we're going to go to Donna.
Sorry, sometimes unmuting is the hardest part of all of this. Thank you, Rob. I love the idea of that type of programming. Composting is absolutely the way to move organic materials out of the waste stream, and so that it can continue to provide nutrients to grow new food. I believe that we could actually pay for such a program with the landfill fees that we pay now, having to put that stuff into a landfill. So I certainly support expanding composting programs. And I, as has been stated in the past, I'm not the professional at this. It's something I'm interested in doing. I am hoping that some professionals will bring some ideas forward that we can move forward with. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. All right, and next we're going to go to Ben Mcshane.
Thank you. I'm very excited for the city's new composting program to be launching this year that we approved in the budget for the current fiscal year. Great step forward. We already have composting opportunities for some of our residents, either home-based. My own family, we compost at the house, but we have the space to do so and can use the compost on our garden boxes. Other residents have pickup opportunities from private vendors. We have some great local businesses that are doing this, and it's fantastic to have our city stepping forward to launch a more robust composting program. We need to be starting, as always, with interested parties. We do have a base of residents and businesses in this community that would like to participate with the composting program. We will start with those folks. I'm confident it will be a success. And then we will roll this out further and further, normalizing the process. And eventually this will be the way that we dispose of things. We regulate how we dispose of things all the time. From tires to oil to trash to recycling, now to composting.
Okay, thank you, Ben. All right, next we're gonna go to Katie Nash.
Yes, I'm really excited about this topic, so I'll try to be very succinct. I do want to compliment Alderwoman Kuzemchak's point about the cost recovery that we can see, and I'm also very excited about Alderman Mcshane's point about private businesses in this space. I myself am a Key City Compost customer, and right around the time that I decided to run, I got asked the question about composting, and so pretty much since then, I've had a standing 8 a.m. Monday morning call with Phil at Key City so he could explain his entire business model so I could completely nerd out over it. They're doing super exciting work. I know the question was about large scale. They're doing super exciting work in schools, and obviously that was put on temporary hold. But there's all kinds of recommendations in the report that I mentioned, the Climate Mobilization Work Group. Please check that out. That's going to be our guidance to move forward. And, just want to emphasize with my last couple of seconds that, composting is going to be an individual behavioral change that we're definitely going to need to educate our residents. And that's why the school program is so exciting, because it educates our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Next, we're going to go to Kelly Russell.
Thank you. I have a compost bin on the side of my house where all of my stuff goes. Now, I'm not sure I'm producing the highest quality compost, but certainly it's all disintegrating into the earth and I have bugs. We're legislators, and so our job is really to support policies and programs that help move these things forward. As far as the nitty gritty of the details in the policy in the program itself, that really is sort of a staff function. We have very amazing staff at our DPW and our sustainability manager that talk about these issues and how we can implement them. We have to look obviously at cost versus effectiveness and all of these things. But I think the point was well made that this is an individual behavioral choice that we have to sort of start moving toward. I did not compost prior to being elected and prior to being on the sustainability committee, but I learned a lot. I sorted things out at the Harry Grove Stadium one Sunday, sorting what was recyclable, what was compostable, and what was trash, and it's just astounding. So.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. And then we're going to go to Derrick with the same question.
Thank you for the question. I'll just list 3 points, which I guess in summary, in terms of which has already been mentioned. One is one of the things that the city can do is a comprehensive education program. We talked about in terms of behavioral changes. So it's going to be incumbent upon the city to have educational programming or educational information in particular, to not to change, but to inform folks of those behavioral changes. Secondly, we've got some young people. I know we talk about the common emergency work group, but we got some tremendous young people who are invested in this, who've committed to this. And I think it's so important that we involve them heavily into this conversation. And lastly, we talk about composting, but I also want to talk about healthy food choices. And that means access for all of our folks and all of our residents and folks who live on the poverty line and below the poverty line to have the access to healthy food choices. It's not enough to say, here's food, but how can we also allow them to have the healthy food choices? Because that's also a health issue for our whole entire community.
Okay, thank you, Derrick. Does anyone have a rebuttal? All righty, then we're going to roll into the next question. The next question is, last summer, the city of Frederick declared racism a public health crisis. What proposals have you put forward or would you put forward to address this public health crisis? And we're going to start with Mcshane.
Thank you, Antonio, and for the question. That was an important definition established last summer in our city, that racism is not something that happens in isolation. It is something that is systemic in our society, in our city, and manifests in so many of the things that we do, manifests in different ways, in every service, in every department. I think that the city has continued to move forward on a lot of different areas, keeping that in mind. That is why we have continued to overhaul the hiring process and go through our equity and inclusion programs. It's why we have continued to fund and take the results from our disparity studies, illuminating the very unequal way that businesses are hired. It's why we are advocating for new community health centers in marginalized communities such as the Hillcrest community on the west side, where the highest number of people of color live in our community. It's why we need to keep this in mind on every one of our decisions.
All right. Thank you, Ben. Next, we'll go to Katie Nash with the same question.
Yes, I want to compliment especially Alderman Shackelford for your leadership on this issue. I do think that the discussion that ensued about the resolution encouraged us to look at health in a more holistic way. And of course, with COVID, the various ways that our decisions and our lack of decisions do impact public health. So I do think that, as we can move forward and we look at how our decisions impact the health of our community, we'll need to continue to expand what our traditional views of public health are and what the elements of that, right? So Alderman Shackelford mentioned food access, recreation opportunities, and making sure that all areas of our city, South End included, have access to those recreation opportunities. I think there are multiple ways that we now need to talk about public health, and of course, the way that we as a government are responding to the crisis of the system of oppression that we have in our government. Thanks.
Thank you, Katie. Next, we'll go to Kelly Russell.
Thank you, and I give great praise and thanks to my colleague Alderman Shackelford, who brought this issue forward, and it was enlightening in so many ways and has caused me to do a lot of inner reflection. One of the things that I did to complement what he had done was to bring forward a resolution that declared equity as a fundamental value in our city, to use equity as a lens by which we view every policy decision that we make and every legislative decision that we make. It's incredibly important that, again, we recognize that there have been systemic disparities over the years, and that it is our responsibility to find those, to correct those, to mitigate the issues that have been caused by that, and to be a responsive government that supports all of the people in this community.
Thank you, Kelly. Now we're going to pass the question over to Derrick Shackleford.
Thank you for the question. I think the first critical point of that is the honest assessment to say that we have racism embedded in our systems. That's the first identifying honest statement that we must acknowledge that racism is embedded in the system and very embedded in the very fabric of what we deem as America. If America is to be great, we also got to identify and say that because America is great, because it has some racist systems, and some racist policies, some racist institutions. So that's first. Secondly, part of that was to how does the city do business, not only business, but inform its policies, but also carry out its policies. This is how the city functions. It's not simply about having a DBE program, having a diversity and inclusion program, but having a program, but this is how the city functions, because diversity and inclusion is more than checking the box, filling the slot, but it's being intentional about that engagement, of that acknowledgement, and doing better as we proceed forward.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll go over to Chris Sparks.
I defer again to Alderman Shackelford and compliment him on his efforts. The first step to realizing that we have a problem is to admit it. And when it comes to this issue, we are dealing with decades of systemic injustice, and we see it play out every day. And the solution to those things, or at least the strategy, is to intentionally listen and intentionally act. There are leaders in minority communities across the city that are speaking up with brilliant ideas and suggestions and want to be heard. Our role as the city is to listen to them and help bring their ideas to fruition in ways that individuals can't, but the city collectively could. I get inspired from an idea from Montgomery County. When they were faced with a similar result of a disparity study, they commissioned their Office of Procurement to deliberately set quotas and incentives to invest in minority and women-owned businesses. Again, this isn't something where we have to reinvent the wheel. We just need to have a plan, and we just need to stick to it.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Now we'll go to Robert.
I think the word intentionality is very important here. I mean, we've talked about, being sure that we're moving with intentionality. And I think a big part of that is ensuring that moving forward, policymaking in the city, when we say it's equitable, that it includes viewpoints of the communities in the city that have traditionally been marginalized or underserved. And making sure that that inclusion takes place is going to be very difficult, because doing that with intentionality is going to mean identifying ways to include those viewpoints. How do we identify points of contact in those communities and ensure that those voices are heard? And we need to determine how to do that so that we can have those voices as part of our government moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Next, we're going to go to Donna Kazemchak.
Thank you. From day one of my very first term, I have fought against racism and misogyny. It was my fourth term before we finally got the Roger Brooke Tawney bust removed from the front of City Hall. That was a fight, and it took a long time. This isn't just one issue, it's multitude issues. And it's something that we need to consider in every single decision we make. Equity inclusion programs, a disparity study, equity is a fundamental value in our city. They're all very, very important, and we're acknowledging them now. The fact is, I've done this from day one. Every single decision I've made, I ask questions about racism, I ask questions about misogyny, I ask questions. I have fought for equality from day one, and I plan to continue to do that to the end of my life. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, does anyone have any rebuttals or anything else they want to add on that using the rebuttal time? All right, then we're going to go into closing statements. All right, we're going to start off with Katie Nash.
Forgot where I was. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, everybody.
I'm going to interject just for a moment. I'm so sorry,
Yep.
Katie. Just to remind you that you have 2 minutes for your closing.
Thank you very much for the reminder. And thank you for all of the organizers and for all of you who attended this evening. It is challenging to boil an idea down to a minute. And if there's something that I said that you have questions about, or if you want to learn more, please get in touch with me. And I'm sure my fellow candidates would agree. You noticed a lot of us tried to sneak things in that we were passionate about, and there's a lot of exciting opportunities before us. We do have challenges like any other municipality of our size. And naturally, we're going to need to take action on those challenges, and we're going to need to be bold. One thing that I think that makes me unique is that I'm not afraid to try new things. And quite frankly, I'm not afraid to fail. I learn from my failures, and that's how we grow. And so I hope that you'll see that I should be one of the 5 that you choose. I hope that you elect a strong team to represent you in the city. And I'm excited to be part of that team. I'd like to thank my fellow candidates. It's been a great evening. Everyone has been very cordial, and I think that's great for the city too. So thank you very much. And I look forward to your support on September 14th. You do have your ballots in the mail, so make sure you get those back if you're going to vote by mail. And again, my website is nashforfrederick.com, nashforfrederick.com. I have multiple position papers there. I'll tell you a secret. It's kind of my own nerding out. As I was going forward, I just got an opportunity to write a bunch of stuff down and do a lot of research. And so I encourage you to check that out, and you can learn more about what I stand for and my ideas to move forward. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the election season.
Thank you, Katie. Next, we'll go to Kelly Russell.
Sorry, unmuting there. It's amazing how fast your time goes when you're talking or listening to somebody else. Thank you, everyone, for throwing your hats in the ring, for being engaged in the process. Thank you for everybody who's participated in this. As I said in the beginning, I'm not really a speech maker. I don't have one of those elevator speeches. What I tell people is what I'm interested in is not what I want to tell you, but what you want to tell me and what I can help you with. So my website is votekellyrussell.com. I am seriously interested in speaking with any of you about anything that concerns you. as a sitting alderman, as a candidate, as a fellow resident of the city of Frederick. VoteKellyRussell@gmail.com is my email address. What I really want to encourage is that you vote. If you are registered, you have received or should receive shortly a ballot in the mail. You can mail it in, you can drop it off. You can come in day of voting. You can early vote September 8th through 11th. From now until I think 8 p.m. probably on September 14th. And if I've gotten that wrong, somebody correct me. You can vote and make your selection. So please be engaged in the process. You're selecting your leaders for the next 4 years for this wonderful city of Frederick. I hope to continue to be a part of the team. And I thank you for the support over the years. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Now we'll go to Derrick Shackleford.
Thank you to our co-host. Thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to those who have been listening, and thank you to those who will be listening to this in the future. I'm reminded of an 1859 novel by Charles Dickens. It was the best of times and the worst of times. It's a great time to be alive, and it's also a challenging time because we know we have some complex issues. We also have some simple solutions and some complex solutions to the issues in which we discussed tonight. As you see, there's a variety and vast array of ideas to these challenges that we are facing as a city and as a community. I believe in my experience as an advocate who's been fighting for these issues before I got elected. As a coach, it allows me the opportunity to work together as a team. As a pastor, that helps me to understand and care for people. And also as a sports enthusiast, I understand in terms of collaborative effort. I like to use all those skills to serve you again for another 4 years. Your vote is important. Your vote is sacred. And I want to earn your vote. I hope to earn your vote and ask that you would vote for me during this election, as you have already received your mail-in ballots. I hope that you've darkened the circle already for my name. And I hope tonight, as you place your mail-in ballot in the mail slot, that you would darken the circle for my name. And I hope on September 14th that you would darken the circle for my name, so I can have the opportunity and privilege to serve you for another 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Derrick. Now we're going to go to Chris Sparks.
For all of you that are here tonight, thank you. Thank you to our hosts, thank you to the candidates, and thank you to all of you who are taking the time to watch this video whenever you are. I'm a small business owner with big ideas, and I'm able to be here tonight because Frederick gave me the place to build my own dream business and bring it to life. When I look at all that Frederick could be, we really can be that place where everybody can stay, play, and thrive. We really can be the destination and the envy of Maryland. It all comes down to you, though. If you are satisfied with the status quo of Frederick, this election is probably going to be pretty easy for you. There are plenty of incumbents running, and you are welcome to renew them for another chance. If you have big ideas about how we forge Frederick's future, then it's time to look to new ideas and to new perspectives and new people. Don't just take my word as gospel, though. In this age, you can Google us. For the incumbents, go back and see how they voted. Go back and watch during the recorded meetings who even bothered to show up and who was too busy. And for us new folks, Google us. Find out about our mistakes. Find out about our triumphs. Find out about the things that we do and the people that we are when we're not on a forum camera and campaigning for you. You will judge our trees by the fruit that they've borne. And I trust in you voters to make the decisions that Frederick needs to flourish from this point forward. I am so grateful to have been here tonight. I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to talk and share ideas with you all. And I hope that now, or as soon as this is over, you walk to that ballot that you have on your bedside table or your desk, and you vote Sparks. Thank you for your time, and let's win this thing on September 14th. Please consider voting for me, Chris Sparks. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Chris. And now we'll go to Robert.
So those of you that had the opportunity to corner probably realized that it was very difficult to try and stuff the discussions that I wanted to have into a minute per question. But I do want to take this time right now, rather than get into a long discussion on policy, to express my profound gratitude to all the people that have been helping me along the way, all the volunteers that have shown up to canvass, to put together literature packets, to stuff envelopes, to do all the things that make a campaign go, all the people who shared my vision for what Frederick could be and how Frederick as a city can better serve the people who live here. Because that's why I'm here. That's, I think, why we're all here, is we want Frederick to be the best possible version of itself. And the hope is that when we get to the end of this in November, that we can solve some of the problems we're looking at, and we can make things a little better, and we can make sure that everybody who lives in Frederick, regardless of what their political stance is or whether they vote or not, has the opportunity to participate in the city to the fullest extent, and that the city serves them as well as it possibly can.
Okay, thank you, Robert. And next we'll go to Donna Kazemchak.
Thank you. So this is a great group of candidates. The city would be lucky to have each and every single person here tonight sitting on the Board of Aldermen. I want to thank you all for your willingness to step into the spotlight and for some of the great ideas that you have. Thanks to my volunteers and thanks to your volunteers. You all make a huge difference in the city and in how the city moves forward. So again, thank you to all of you. Thanks to those who are holding the forum and to those who are watching. I would like you to consider my experiences as a woman who did CPR on her dying husband, the single mother of 2 young boys, the stepmother of a special needs child who passed away before she turned 16, a loyal friend, and a fierce fighter for equal rights. Then added my experience with government, schools, the nonprofit sector, and real estate. And I believe I understand both city issues and personal difficulties more deeply than most. Those experiences have given me the ability to look at things in a different way than many other people look at things. I appreciate the time that I've had to do that. I would love one more term to continue to move the city forward. Please visit www.votefordonnak.com to support my campaign. I would be honored to have all of your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. And now we'll go to Ben Mcshane.
Thank you again to everyone for participating tonight, and to our hosts tonight from so many of our local Democratic groups and organizations. As I said before, we live in an amazing city. I'm grateful to be raising my children here. I'm proud to be representing this community. I'm amazed at the wonderful life that I have here and the wonderful future that I believe still lays ahead of me. But I ran for office 4 years ago because I also knew that many families in this community did not feel as lucky as I do. They did not feel as included in our city's prosperity. They did not feel as certain that their future was as beautiful as I believe and hope that mine will be. And I ran for those folks to advocate for a more just community, for a more egalitarian government. I ran to reprioritize the people that we listen to and the things that we spend our tax dollars on. And I'm proud of the work that we've done over the last 4 years to advance equity in our hiring, in our contracting, in how we spend our money. I'm proud personally to have advanced legislation to confront climate change, to hold renters in better dignity and to keep them safe from predatory actions during COVID. I was proud to advocate for childcare programs and to advocate that our COVID relief dollars equitably reach marginalized communities, people with non-traditional rent agreements, undocumented residents. We've done great work. And I've tried to always remember that we need to prioritize those most vulnerable people and to never turn my back on someone when they've come to me for help, when they've been afraid, when they've felt threatened. With your support, I'll be standing up for you for another 4 years.
Thank you, Ben. And I'd like to take this time to thank all the candidates for, participating in this forum. And I'd like to thank the audience for joining us tonight. And I'd also like to thank Mary and WDL, Laura, our great timekeeper, and everyone else working behind the scenes, Maureen, Gary, Ed. I know I'm gonna forget somebody. But I'd again like to thank the audience for coming in and joining us.
Thank you to our interpreters and to everyone that joined us this evening, candidates. The video will be emailed to you and uploaded to our social media sites within 48 hours. Have a wonderful night, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Good night, folks. Stay well.